So today we're going to install a Quickshifter on our MT-09 and hopefully get a nice test ride. Now on this video I'm going to try to show how to install an original equipment OEM Quickshifter from Yamaha. I bought mine from Partzilla. Cost was $136. On some of the models of this bike, and I don't know which, and it really doesn't matter because this is a 2020. I bought it brand new. It didn't have a Quickshifter, and Yamaha makes this as an accessory for this bike. It's supposed to be a plug-and-play. We're going to find out, and I'm going to try to cover any little thing that might help you install one on your bike, assuming that you have an MT-09. It doesn't have a Quickshifter. Now, to be honest, and honesty in advertising here, I don't have a Quickshifter. I've never had a Quickshifter on any of my bikes. I own 9 bikes right now, 7 of them are registered, and I've had track bikes and I've had R1, Ninjas. Never had a Quickshifter, so for me this is going to be a new experience, and I'll share my feelings with it once we go out on a test ride, and I can have a little fun playing around with it. But again, this is a brand new bike my wife bought me for my 75th birthday. Did not come with a Quickshifter, and by the end of this day we're going to have a Quickshifter on it, I hope. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention, putting a Quickshifter on an older bike like my R1 is a 2009. I have looked at videos of people installing them, various ones beside the aftermarket one and the Yamaha one, and it looked like a very elaborate, complex job. I've had this motorcycle apart, had all the fuel injected off, replaced the starter motor, and taking this bike apart is not a 15-minute job. So I'm assuming, and I wanted to mention this right at the beginning of the video, if you have a complex sport bike, this is going to be a big job. What makes it a small, easy job is Yamaha. At one point in time, I believe, but I'm not sure, this was part of the motorcycle, and so it's already wired up. It already has a light on a dashboard for the traction control, and so what I think is they just maybe left this off as a way of keeping a price. This bike listed out at $88.99, so I think maybe they just did it to save money. Now you have to pay the $100, but it would have been nicer if they put it in at the factory. Just a little truth in advertising there. But anyway, it's $136. But the point that I wanted to make is putting a Quickshifter, a Yamaha OEM Quickshifter on this bike, a lot less of a job than on this bike. I wish I could say that I could just go buy one and plug it in somewhere on the bike. Supposedly there's a plug under the tank. This should be a relatively straightforward, relatively easy job, and that's what I wanted to make. I wanted to make sure people understand the difference between the difference between fitting an aftermarket Quickshifter or a factory OEM. Again, a little bit more complex. The OEM plug and play, a lot easier. Now, since I got this for my birthday, I made some carbon fiber parts. I showed these on my channel. I have ordered from China a carbon fiber front fender. I polished up the wheels, that's on my channel, and I polished up the exhaust system. I'm not sure you can really even see it. We don't have good lighting in here. But I have a couple of comments to make about the MT-09. I was not aware of, when I bought it, what a great bike this is. This really exceeded my wildest dream. And now that I've had it, and I've got about 4,000 miles on it, I'm more than willing to do upgrades, and I have other things in mind here. Don't want to let the cat out of the bag just quite yet, but it has been, if you're new to the world of MT-09s, it is the most fun bike I have ever had. And I've had a lot of bikes in my almost 60 years of owning motorcycles. I've had quite a few motorcycles. So let me go downstairs to the shop, unbox the kit. We always like on our videos to do an unboxing so you see what you get for your money. And then come out to the garage and do the install. And hopefully today, if we get a decent day this afternoon, we'll even get our test ride this afternoon and try to share my impressions of how it worked. So some truth in advertising before I go any further. I like to keep everything as straight up and honest as I can possibly do. Even though Partzilla is one of the people that has advertised or may advertise on this video, I don't know. I do not get things for free. I paid the price, the normal price everybody pays. Again, it's $136 for what's in this box. And I assume this is going to be a lot of fun. Now, I wanted to mention one thing about this, because this is a 2020. I had called down to Partzilla. I had spoken to them on the phone, and I wanted to be sure because their SKU didn't show that this fits a 2020. It shows up to a 19. But since the bikes are very similar, and I didn't think they'd change much in terms of the shifting linkage or the connection under the tank, but obviously we're gonna find out. So they told me, and I've known this to be true, so I wanted to pass, again, good information on. Save all the packaging. Don't just rip it all up and throw it away. There's a pack and slip in here, which I don't really need. I'm going to take this apart with a razor blade very carefully, because if this doesn't fit and I have to return it, I want to have all the original packaging. So basically, this is what you get. Directions, of course. The Quickshifter parts are all in little bags, and each one has a unique Yamaha, the number. And I want to keep all the packaging. I don't want to tear it all up. I'll take that out of the packaging now. Okay, so I carefully took everything out. I'll read the instructions before we do anything. I know this type of joint is used in aviation all the time. And I'll just pass on a little bit of information that I know from designing and making control systems for aircraft that use this type of joint, a ball joint, a Heim joint, whatever you're going to refer this to. If this ball joint starts to develop a little play, what happens is these ball joints, they beat themselves to death. It's really important to keep this one tiny drop of lubricant on there, and I'll put some on there, of course, and keep it clean so dirt doesn't get in, because wear here, if the shifter were to start doing that somewhere down the road, a year, 2 years, whatever, I don't know how bad it would be, but I know in an airplane it's not good to have that. And of course the Quickshifter parts. So we're basically ready to read the directions and head out to the shop and get this installed. Now, I read the directions over, and I'm going to be going step by step to try to make this, it looks like it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy, but just for somebody that may have a question, hopefully we can answer all the questions on this video. And step one is to remove the rod and save all the parts. So just to make this just a little bit easier, I put a piece of blue tape across, slid it with a razor blade so I know these are very accurate. There's actually a little casting mark here that you can reference off with, no matter how you do it. And this is just so when I put this back together with the new linkage, it should be very easy to line it right back up where it was. Otherwise, you got to do it by eye. And when you pull the rubber boot back, you can see there's an Allen bolt. That'll come off, and there's a little spacer in the back, and we saved those parts. Now, just to mention, one thing that can be handy to have when you're working in these confined areas, these come from Harbor Freight or anything similar, so you can look in and see. It just makes it a little bit easier here out in the garage. Now, I know under some conditions you'd have better lighting. I don't have exceptionally good lighting here, so it's always handy to have a little tool like this, especially when we get underneath the gas tank to get this plugged up. This will be an invaluable tool. Now, this is a bolt that usually has Loctite on it, and we're going to put Loctite on it. It tells you right in the directions which bolts need Loctite. You definitely don't want to leave these loose. Now, the problem is if this were to get loose and start vibrating, it's going to beat that Heim joint to death. That's the other problem here. And we'll be real careful about saving these parts. Now, the bottom Heim joint stays in position. We just need to loosen this nut, and then we can thread out. This piece will thread right out. Now, this piece has reverse threads on each side is different, so as you twist it, it gets longer. Twist it the other way, it gets shorter. Okay, so with that piece off, now we're going to unscrew these nuts, and one is reverse thread. We're going to use these nuts over when we build the new part that's going to have the electrical contact in it. So I'm using the directions. I'm going step by step. Pretty self-explanatory. We're taking parts off of this, the original part, I need the nut from the end, so I got to take off the old heim joint, put that away. I need this nut. I'll save the linkage, of course. This nut is going to go on here on the new heim joint. And remember, on one of these, on the bottom one, it's a reverse thread. So if you're not familiar with threads, that can be a little confusing. Now, again, I'm looking at this. I want to make sure I go step by step. Now, what I did before I actually assemble this, and this is a good idea, if you read the directions, it'll tell you the dimensions. There's going to be a dimension up here, and I'll try to explain what this is all about. The dimension up here is so that, and this would obviously be one of the first things to do, the directions are okay, but they want a certain amount of threads caught. What they don't want to have is that this piece is only hanging on by one thread. What would happen then, this would tend to do that. So I want to make sure, and their dimension is, and what I've done, I've been really clever about this. I went down to my calculator on the computer and calculated out the dimension they want is 24 millimeters. It's actually 15/16, and I want to measure that before I just hand tighten a nut. Now let me definitely make sure I'm not misunderstanding what they're trying to say here, because I'm trying to pass this information on in a logical way. I'm going to try to show this as best I can. This is the dimension I'm looking at, is the center of the heim joint. Let me just get this. And the back of the nut. And I know you see it doesn't show up well on the video because I'm at an angle here. I'm getting a parallax angle. But it's that dimension center to there. Now what the purpose of that is that I know now I have enough of the threads caught in here. So I'm just going to make this hand tight just so it doesn't move while I do the rest of the assembly. Okay, the next step with that part hand tight is to get this threaded in just enough that we can do our overall dimension. Now the next step on this is a little tricky because again, this part is, if I turn it one way, it gets shorter, one way longer. Put this back on the bike, and then I want the overall dimension to be the other dimension I worked out on my ruler, that when I adjust this, I want to get both sides started at the same time, get this in place, and then adjust this to the overall length. And then make sure that my shifter is still in the right position. This is kind of a critical adjustment. So before I do this part, I'll get a drop of Loctite on both sides of this because ultimately I want this not to move at all. Now basically as I'm turning this, I'm going to try to wind up, I'll put it in 4 or 5 turns and see how close I am to where I ultimately want to be, and then I want to measure the center to the center and make sure I'm in the dimension, and when I am in that dimension I want the shifter to line up all at the same time. But again, as I turn this one way, the rod gets longer, the other way it gets shorter, and there's a flat spot so you can put a wrench on it, but right now everything is just hand tight. Now because I have this basically roughed in now, I can put this bolt in, put the little spacer on the back, and when I'm all done I'll make sure this has the right lubrication on it. Again, keeping these heim joints lubricated and clean, a big thing. This is just going to allow me, nothing is tight yet, because I don't have the final dimension. Now I don't have this dimension. I need to go to my ruler. This has to come out the bottom, so I've got to back this out. And I can see this is one of the steps you would not want to get wrong. So a good thing I did this. And this goes on the bottom. And let me just take this off. Put this on this way. Again, the directions are pretty complete, but it can be tricky. Right now that's on the bottom where it should be. Now by making this hand tight, this is on the bottom. Now I can set the final length. That's the last step. Now what I've done is I've just reset this by eye because I'm going to check this dimension now. Center to center with my ruler, that I've got a very accurate dimension, and see, and actually if it comes out real close, I'm real close right here, then I already have Loctite on all the threaded parts, and I can just sock everything down to torque. Now, one thing I realized, the ruler is not going to get in there conveniently, so I took a thin piece of wood and I marked accurately on it where that dimension is going to be, and this piece of wood now will allow me to get in there and just do the measurement a lot easier, but I've taken it off of a real draftsman's ruler. So this is a lot easier for me, and I know this is not going to work. I'm getting that on center, and right here I'm on center, so I'm really close, and that's the dimension they want. And at the same time, that lines up with exactly where this was from the factory. So I feel pretty good that we can right now torque these down to the settings they give in the directions. And I know they don't want you to over torque any of these. They don't want you to strip them. So I'm going to do exactly what the directions say. So remember, this is a reverse thread. This is a standard thread. This is a standard thread. And you don't want to over tighten them. Just use Loctite. It's a much better choice. Now we can also, I'm going to put a drop of the grease that I use, and because I don't want these, just one little drop of grease will be enough. And I don't want them to be oozing grease out either. But if that's not greased, there's going to be wear and tear on the bottom one too, of course. The bottom one is actually probably the worst. The more chance of getting dirt on it because of the chain and everything, but keeping those clean and greased, an important thing. Now I'll just let this work its way in, and what'll happen is, and I'll wipe every last little bit off. I only want it in the areas, and of course at the bottom too, down there. I only want this to penetrate on a wearing surface, keep that from beating itself to death. And a final torque setting on this is 7 foot-pounds, so again, you really don't want to overdo it. And of course, use Loctite. So the next step on this is to locate where this little plastic clamp goes, because it's going to keep the wire from interfering that comes from the Quickshifter and goes up under the tank. So this blue tape is here to show you where to put the clamp, this little plastic snap clamp. And of course you don't want it interfering with the heim joint. It just attaches that right to the electronic part of that shifter. And it's just a question of just pressing the clamp on, making sure it's where the blue tape is, that there's no tension on anything. And now this is ready to route up under the seat, up under the tank area here. Next thing we have to do is raise the tank and take the seat off. Now the next step is to loosen the 2 shoulder bolts, and then we'll be able to raise the tank right up with a block of wood or a rubber hammer or something, and see if we could reach in. Now I know it's a tight clearance in there, so it's going to be a little challenging. I may have to do a little fooling around here, but because I have big fat fingers. But if you have nice little fingers, this is a great time. With the 2 bolts out, I wanted to, there it is, right there is the connector, I believe, but I have to check. I have to route that wire up through there, make sure I can get my fingers in there, and I think that's going to be a challenging thing. And when you go to route this wire, having a set of forceps or needle nose pliers or something equivalent to that is a really big help. Unless, of course, you have that magic thing, little baby fingers, which I don't have. Okay, now that goes back there. Kind of straightforward, but that'll go there. And this is just going to get snapped. But again, this is more challenging than what you think it really is. Get that. So now on this piece there's a little cover, and that cover, it's a little tricky to get it off. I think it's easier to get it off from the other side. You got to get that cover off before you can, of course, snap the wire together, and it only goes in one way. There's the little cover that comes off, and there is a little tang. You have to press down on the tang and pull this off and hope that that you have nice tiny fingers. It would have been nice if they left maybe a 1/4 inch more of material. And the snap is on the bottom, the snap is on the bottom. Okay. As I said, challenging.
Now the instructions say it's easier to get it to snap from this side, and well, looks like they were right, to be honest. Okay. That's the most difficult part of the whole job. So here you have this special zip tie, and this part plugs in. There's a hole in the frame, in a bracket, and then that becomes a zip tie that just holds the wire from chafing. So let's just trace this up. Here's a little clamp that holds the wire there, and there's a little bracket, and it's right here where my finger's pointing. It has a little hole in it that attaches where that's going to snap in, and that just keeps this wire from doing that, from flapping around. Now this is a good place to have forceps too. What I found is a good way to do this is just put this right in the middle, and that of course is going to snap in. And the forceps, without these forceps, I don't know how you could get in there and just snap that in. It just snaps in. And actually that worked out just about perfectly. And that's about, there's no interference on anything. Now as I put this back, one little tip that you probably won't find anyplace else, because I'm always the lucky one that has this happen. I have the two bolts that came out of here. One came right out. The other one, I'm not sure why. It didn't have any lock. It does not have any Loctite on it, and yet it really didn't come out the way it should. So what I had to do, let me show this. Maybe this is something useful. I had to take and grind I did this with a Dremel tool. Just put a screwdriver screw, because once this radius is out, you'll never get the bolt out. So I just put a cutting wheel in. So I don't know the proper name for this tool. I've had it for so long, and it's served me well. But anytime you can't get a bolt out, as a last resort, you can grind with a Dremel tool, grind a notch, and this will usually get it out. And what happens is the grinding of the notch heats the bolt, so if it's an interference thing because of some red Loctite or something, this is like the nuclear option. But again, I don't know the real name of the tool. It's a Harbor Freight tool, so they probably named it whatever they wanted. But it is a good tool, and it works. And just for reference, this is a tool that'll cut a notch in a grade 8 bolt. These are available at Harbor Freight too. They plug right into a Dremel tool. In this case, it's a Roto Zip heavy duty tool. But I've found out these are really, really useful. That is a great tip. When you can't get a bolt out, when you grind that notch, that heat just makes the bolt so much easier to get out. It works almost every time. Anyway, this went pretty well. And once this is done, of course we have to set. And I'll go through it. I'm trying to do this in exactly the directions, or very similar anyway, because I think most people, if they do this, and you're a backyard mechanic, you want to know, number one, you know, the easiest way to do it and what the little pitfalls are. And not being able to get that bolt out is a pitfall. So now I've got to tighten this all up, and we're ready to energize the Quickshifter. I think the real problem with this whole thing was these bolts are just soft material. These are not grade 8 bolts or anything. And they don't have to be to do the job they're doing, but when the threads aren't exactly right, well, that's nice. Okay, everything's back the way it is. Put the seat on, and we're ready to set the Quickshifter. And you would think a brand new motorcycle you wouldn't have issues like this, but it seems like 1 in a million, and I get the 1 in a million. So the way this is supposed to work is you're supposed to put a really good amount of pressure on a Quickshifter, which I am. Turn this key, count to 10, and in 10 seconds that light should come on. And you shut it off the same way. You hold it on, and 10 seconds later it's supposed to come on, because you can shut it off. And there it is. There's the Quickshifter light. Now the Quickshifter does not work when you pull a clutch in. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But I think we're almost ready to get out on, do a little test ride and see how this is going to play out. And again, if you don't like it, you can always just not use it. It's easy, or you can shut it off. but that is, the QS is the Quickshifter Lite. Now, being honest, I don't know which bikes, modern bikes, come with Quickshifters. Some do, some don't. But what's really nice, I wish I had a plug and play for the R1. Well, you know, that's a much bigger job. This was really a relatively simple, relatively straightforward job. I hope I didn't leave out any steps or any tips that might help you if you're doing this for the first time. And of course, thank you to everybody that contributes their information on YouTube, and I certainly have used it over the years for many things. It's saved me a lot of time and energy. Next part of this should be the most fun of all. Get out on the open road and let's see if we like it. And if we don't, we just won't use it. I think we're gonna like it. And I'll try to, before I end this video, get some footage of going through the gears and some comments about how this played out. Now, I think it's not out of the realm of any backyard mechanic or anybody with a set of tools to do this, but it's always best to go through the directions one by one by one. And my habit is whenever I do any kind of a job that I'm not familiar with, I even replaced an ice maker in my refrigerator this way, I watch all the videos on YouTube. Thank you guys again. That's always a great way to prep yourself up for doing a backyard mechanic job. Anyway, time to get out on the open road. I gotta get suited up and get out of here. Ready for a test ride at last. All right, we got the radar detector ready. Let's go check out this Quickshifter. Unfortunately, not a bright sunny day, but we'll make the most of it. In fact, as we leave Rutherford, it was really getting pretty nasty looking.
That it's a lot more fun than I thought it would be. And there was a lot of traffic on the way up here. And it was really handy having it in traffic. I was surprised.
Now, because the bike has a quiet muffler, I'm not sure you hear it going through the gears well. I really can't tell what the sound is going to be in the final after they get done at YouTube.
Now, I had my idea that traction control was going to be a certain thing, and it's not. It's a lot more fun than I thought it would be. I really hope I can get one someday for the R1 too.
It is absolutely more fun than you could imagine. And there's not much I can do about the wind noise. It's annoying, I know.
Now, I always leave it on setting 2. The reason is simple. Where I'm riding, and you can probably see, the roads are usually wet. There's a lot of leaves in the road. The leaves are falling everywhere. And what happens, that traction control kicks on. This bike, by the way, has a great traction control. It also keeps you from doing unwanted wheelies. If you want to do a wheelie, you just got to shut it off. But I don't want to be doing any wheelies here. I don't want to be doing a wheelie off into one of these trees either. Boy, it looks like it's going to rain. We're going to have to cut this test a little short. It's already starting to rain a little bit.
That traction control works perfectly on this bike. You're going to actually see the light on the dashboard flickering when it kicks on.
Now, this bike is so much fun even without traction control. And what I've been doing is just using mid-throttle settings until I get used to it. Then I'm going to head up to where I can have a nice long straightaway to go through the gears. But even in this environment right here, it's a load of fun. It's more fun than you think it would be.
I'm totally impressed with how this added to the value of the bike. And even on a wet leaf day, didn't stop me from having fun.
Now, I'm not sure you see this on the video, but I'm going to try to pan the sky here. There's been on and off raindrops, and the roads are wet and full of wet leaves. So what's happening, it's distorting my test. When you're using a Quickshifter, a lot of times the traction control will kick in, and I have it on the most invasive setting right now.
And the minute that wheel spins in something wet, even straight up and down, traction control. And as I said, I have it on the most invasive setting because these roads are like greased light. You know, on a track day, you'd probably want to go to setting 1, or turn it off, but not today. And this turned out to be a really nice ride after all.
So the bottom line here is I just can't believe how good the traction control is. Now I've added to that the Quickshifter. Every time I upgrade this bike even a little bit, I'm never disappointed. This is a great bike, a totally fun bike.
Anybody hasn't ridden one of these really should take a test ride. And I know several people that also own sport bikes ride this more than a sport bike.
Now it has stopped raining finally, but the roads are still wet. And I wanted to burn up a whole tank of gas, but given the weather, I think we're going to cut our losses here. But we found out what we came out to find out. The Quickshifter is great. Anybody that's never had one, believe me, it's more fun than you think it would be.
And I'm looking forward to a day the roads will be nice and dry. So the first day out with traction control and our Quickshifter, both of them have proven to be really valuable. On these wet roads, that traction control kicks in the minute something starts to spin. Really a good safety feature. The Quickshifter and the combination of both of them makes for just a lot of fun. I don't know if there's a better word, I don't know, because I've run into several people that have an MT-09 or have ridden one, and to a man, they all think it's the most fun bike in the world. This makes it even just a little more fun. Anyway, I want to thank the healthcare workers, as I do at the end of every one of my videos. And if you're new to the channel and you've never seen anything on my channel, there's informative things, painting, carbon fiber, rides, whatever we can contribute, we're glad to contribute. And I hope you'll contribute stuff too. So anyway, I enjoy making the videos. I hope you enjoy watching them. Thank you so much for watching. And I try to post something useful or entertaining every day. We do miss a few days now and then because of family obligations, but I try to get on a stick every morning and do something relating to motorcycling. So again, the MT-09 has just exceeded my wildest dream. This Quickshifter made it even better. I can't explain to somebody how much I like this bike because I know they think I'm just making it up or that somebody just sent me one for free. They didn't, unfortunately. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I do enjoy editing them. I do enjoy sharing them with my friends. I hope you'll check out other videos on the channel. And thanks so much for watching.